Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a chocolate sponge cake, or maybe I should say a chocolate sponge roll, because we're going to bake this cake in a sheet pan. And then once it cools, we're going to roll it around a cream filling so it has that lovely spiral design. The question I'm asked most often about this cake is, where is the flour? And what is very unique about this sponge cake is that it doesn't have any flour, which gives it this light, airy, moist, it just kind of melts in your mouth. It's more like, I would say, a chocolate mousse. And it's really just delicious. So we're going to start, preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 180 degrees Celsius, and then you'll need a sheet pan. And either lightly butter, or you can just spray it with one of those cooking sprays. And then what I've done here is put a piece of parchment paper down, and then either butter and flour the parchment, or I just use one of those cooking sprays with the flour already in it. It makes it really easy. And what this does is, so you'll be able to release the cake very easily from the pan, and then when it cools, with buttering and flouring the paper, we'll be able to easily remove that paper. So for this batter, we need 6 large eggs, and they need to be separated. And separate them while they're cold. It's much easier to do. And then just let them come to room temperature. And then you'll need to melt 4 ounces, that's 120 grams of semi-sweet chocolate. Now you can do this in a saucepan, like a bowl over a saucepan of simmering water, or you could just do it in a microwave and let that cool. And the first thing we need to do is take these 6 large egg yolks and put them in the bowl of our mixer, and use the paddle attachment for this. And along with the egg yolks, we're going to add 1/4 of a cup, which is 50 grams of granulated white sugar. And then we're going to beat this on high speed for probably about 3 to 5 minutes. We want it to be really light and fluffy and thick, so thick that when I raise the paddle attachment, the batter will slowly fall back in ribbons into the batter. It's going to be really nice and thick. So on high speed. Okay. So as you can see, these are beautiful lemon color. They're thick, fluffy. And see how when I raise the beater, the batter falls right back and kind of disappears in ribbons there. So that's what you're looking for. So now we're just going to flavor the batter with 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and try to use a pure vanilla extract. There's a lot better flavor than the artificial. And I'm just going to beat that in. And finally, we're going to add the 4 ounces of melted chocolate that has cooled to room temperature. Make sure it's not hot, because that's not what we want here. So just add all that in. And then I'm just going to beat this until it's all mixed in. You can see it's just wonderfully silky smooth there. Now just so you can see what I'm doing, I am going to transfer this to this large bowl, because once we beat the egg whites, that way you can see how I fold them in. You don't need to do this step at home. You can just leave it in this mixing bowl. Okay. Just going to give that a stir to make sure it's all mixed together. And that's that. So now what we got to do is use a separate clean bowl and make sure it's clean. You don't want any grease when you're beating the egg whites, like what I just did there. And then what we need is the whisk attachment for this. So take your 6 large egg whites that are at room temperature. Put that in there. And then I'm just going to beat this to break up the egg whites until they're foamy. Just to like medium speed. Okay, so that's good. They're foamy. So now I'm going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of cream of tartar. Now, if you can't find cream of tartar, you can just leave it out, or just add maybe like a pinch of salt. And what the cream of tartar does is stabilize the egg whites and helps them reach their full volume. So I'm going to continue to beat this on, say, medium speed until we get soft peaks. So our egg whites now, as you can see, are at soft peaks. So the final thing is to add 2 tablespoons of granulated white sugar. It's about 30 grams. And I'm going to add that gradually while the mixer is running and have it at about medium-high speed. And we're going to add the sugar and continue to beat until we get stiff peaks, stiff and shiny peaks. There. I'm just going to make sure that all that sugar is mixed in. But we're almost there, as you can see. Oops. Just 10 seconds more and we're done. So you can see that one fairly quickly. If you have your egg whites at room temperature, and you get, as you can see, you get really nice volume from these whites. So the only thing that's left is we have to add the whites into the chocolate mixture. Now we're going to do this gradually because we don't want the batter to deflate. We don't want the egg whites. We want to keep all that wonderful volume. So I'm just going to add a bit because the chocolate mixture is so thick. You want to first just lighten it. So once that looks good, so I'm going to add a little more of the whites. The one advantage of using a large bowl, especially that's wide like this, is you can really fold in the whites easily. And we want big strokes down and around, cut through. But don't overmix, because if you mix too much, that will cause your whites to deflate, and you won't get the nice volume in your sponge cake that you want. Because as you notice, we didn't add any baking powder, baking soda. All of the leavening comes from the air that we've whipped into the eggs, which gives us that wonderfully light texture that we all like with sponge cakes. So, as you can see. And if you have a few little streaks of white, don't worry about that. That's fine. So now, just pour that into your prepared sheet pan. And then I like to use this long offset spatula, but you can just use the back of a spoon and just big strokes. Just spread it out as evenly as you can for the whole pan. Do it as evenly. Now, what I like to do, because as you can probably see, you can get some air bubbles here. So just take your pan and see, I don't know whether you can see this, but there's lots of air bubbles. So if you just bang the pan a few times on the counter, that'll get rid of that. So into the oven for 15 to 17 minutes. Now you can see it's really glossy right now. It'll lose that, it'll be puffed, and if you press it in the center, it'll kind of spring back up. So our chocolate sponge cake is now done. As you can see, the surface has dulled and it is puffed, and if you press it, it'll spring back. So we need to let this cool completely before we fill it and roll it up into the spiral. But we need to keep it moist as it cools. And so what we need to do is get a clean dishcloth, and I just use a squirt bottle. You can just run it under the tap. And what you do is we want to get the dishcloth damp. So it's easy if you just spray it. Just want to get it moist. You want to get, not soaking wet, but just, and then just lay it over the top. And this will keep the moisture in so that it's easier to roll up into a spiral and it prevents cracking. So I'm just going to let this cool, and then we will make the cream filling. So our chocolate sponge cake has now completely cooled. So we're going to make some cream to fill it. I'm going to make raspberry whipped cream. And so if you have a stand mixer like this, have the whisk attachment. And I like to put the bowl and the whisk in the freezer for about 15 minutes to get nice and cold, and that helps the cream really whip up to its full volume. So what I have here is 1 cup, that's 240 milliliters of heavy cream, and that you may know it as double cream, and it's cream with a 35 to 40% butterfat content, and that means that when you whisk it, it will reach stiff peaks. And to that, I'm just going to add a little sugar, tablespoon, about 15 grams of granulated white sugar, and just a little vanilla extract, about a half a teaspoon, and try to use the pure. It has better flavor than the artificial. And I'm just going to beat this on medium, high speed, just until we get soft peaks. Okay, so we have nice soft peaks. So what I'm going to do is just add about 1/3 of a cup, that's 80 milliliters of, I'm going to use just raspberry jam, and I have the seeds. If you want, you can use seedless raspberry jam or preserves. You could also, if you had some fresh raspberry sauce on hand, you could add that. Or if you don't want raspberry flavor, I mean, you could add blackberry or strawberry or just really any type of jam that you like. And I'm just going to beat that in. Okay. Simple enough. See, that's what you're looking for. Now, if you like, you can vary the amount of jam. If you kind of taste it and go, it's not strong enough raspberry flavor, you could add a little more. It's really a matter of personal taste. So that's done. So now for the chocolate sponge roll. Take off that. And now we're going to have to release it from the pan. So take a sharp knife and just run it, which I've already done here, but Just run it all the way along so it releases from the sides. And as you can see, it's kind of wet on top. We have the towel, the damp towel, because we want it to be a little moist because we don't want it to crack. Although this does have a tendency to crack, so don't worry if it does. But putting the damp towel minimizes that cracking. So then I'm just going to slide it off. That's the good part about greasing our pan, is it slides away easily. And so now we still have the paper, as you can see, underneath, and that will help us roll it up. So I'm just going to put the cream top here. The other choice is not to even add any flavoring and just have plain whipped cream, which I often do as well. So we're just going to spread this out. See, I like the seeds because it adds a little texture to this cream. As you can see, it's a really pretty pink color, which goes nicely with the chocolate brown. Now what's nice about this is once you make it, you can cover it and put it in the fridge for like up to about 5 days. So this would be a nice dessert to make when you're having company because you can make it ahead of time. Takes the pressure off of the day you're having the party. Okay, I don't want to waste any of that. So. Okay, so I like a pretty thick sponge roll, so I'm going to start rolling at the short end. And I mean, some people, if you wanted a really thin and long one, you could do it from the long side. But so as you roll, you're going to take off the parchment paper. I'm going to use the paper as a guide here. Try to get it fairly tight as you go. And as you can see, there's a little cracking, but that's perfectly normal here. This is just so moist. I mean, it just melts in your mouth when you eat it. It's hard to stop at one piece, I find. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Okay. So I'm not gonna take the paper totally off. So get your platter, and then let's see how to do this. What I'm going to do is finish it off right on the platter here. See if I can figure out how to do this. Okay, there we go. Might have to clean your platter and then just kind of straighten it out. Okay. Now, I like to just dust the top. As you can see, there's a little bit of cracking, but not very much. And then we can just dress it up a bit. Now the darkness of the cocoa powder goes nicely with the chocolate brown of the sponge roll. And if you want, because it's raspberry filling, you could just decorate just down the top or on the sides. Some people like to make extra cream and then pipe rosettes down the top if you want to do that. But you can just kind of have fun with this. So I'm just going to go here. I can just slice a piece. As you can see, isn't that lovely? Like I said, it just literally melts in your mouth. It's so creamy and moist and just wonderful. So until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com.